My name is Jeremy Britton. I work in UCD. I'm currently project manager for an initiative here called the Unified Support Model. And joining me as co-host today is Olga Murdoch from UCD Agile. Both myself and Olga's roles in UCD kind of surround and involve supporting other people to do the work that they need to do. Which means that we get a lot of experience and had a lot of experience over the last few months in supporting people in this new world, in this new distributed office. And that effectively is why I'm here talking to you today. So before I move on, there's a little bit of housekeeping to take care of, just a few bits and pieces to talk through. So bear with me. So this is going out as part of a LHE festival, as well as a UCD conference as well. So just a quick note on the LHE event. LHE is a community of practice where improvement practitioners in the higher education sector can support each other, learn from each other, celebrate successes with each other. And that's a theme that you'll actually see kind of throughout the course of this presentation. It involves that, as does Work Smarter Together, which I'll talk about in a second as well. For those joining us as part of the Lean HE festival, just a little bit on UCD here on your screens, so you can familiarize yourselves if you don't already know. That's a picture of UCD where none of us are at the moment. Well, some of us are. Most of us are working remotely. The key figures there, obviously, in the number of staff and the number of support staff, the number of students. So we've got about over 30,000 students, including our overseas campuses. And it's as it says there on the screen, it's a Parkland campus. It's a beautiful campus when the sun shines. And it's something that what was I going to say there? Doesn't matter, let's move on. So for anyone who is unfamiliar as well with Work Smarter Together, just to note, Work Smarter Together is a community of practice within UCD. So in a similar way to the Lean HE, it's about bringing people together, the innovators, the doers, the improvers, the people who are interested in working together, all the good stuff. And it's been going on in various iterations for nearly 10 years now. The details are up on the screen there for anyone who wants to find out more. You can follow us on Twitter at UCD WorkSmart. And then there's some information there on the right-hand side about Work Smarter Together in action, what it does. This event is part of the offerings, part of the things that Work Smarter Together does. And again, in that theme of bringing people together to do innovative things and work together, you'll be seeing more of that throughout the session. So with all of that out of the way, I'm going to take you through the session outline. So today's session, in effect, is a story. It's a story in two acts. The first act is really about COVID-19 and its impact on the university, the challenges, the pitfalls, the lessons, and the learnings. So the project that I'm involved in, the Unified Support Model, involves supporting students and staff across campus. It's working with staff to look at the interactions that take place between themselves and students and staff, to look to at ensuring consistency, to look at making sure that everyone's getting the best out of those interactions. And obviously we were working away on this before COVID came along. And when COVID struck, it impacted the project. Obviously, it had an impact on our capacity to deliver the project in the way that we had intended. But it also obviously had an impact on the service that was being delivered already. So things changed very quickly for all staff in the university in relation to the supports and services they delivered. So what I'll be talking about is how we saw some of that as a project team, what we saw emerging as challenges, what we saw emerging as the kind of the lessons, and what we've taken away from that. The second act is about Wufoo. It's about a tool that came to us that we knew about, that we had been using, but that suddenly met a whole new swath of emerging needs that were coming up as a result of where we were. So also throughout this, we'll be giving you an opportunity to ask your questions and for you to tell us about your experiences in any similar experiences you have or anything that resonates with you. I'm going to level with you here. The first act is a little bit on the negative side. But it has to be that way, because as with any good story, we have to set up the beast in Act 1 so that we can slay it in Act 2. And that's what we'll do. So bear with me through the first act, and then we'll move on from there. So just moving on to me very briefly. So what brought me here today, and why am I sitting here telling you this story? Well, first of all, my background in UCD. I attended UCD as a student way back when, and I completed a Bachelor of Arts. I then left UCD for a few years, and I got scared of the big bad world, and I said, no, thank you, I'm going to go back there. And I came back and I worked as a staff member here. And I managed the student desk in UCD Registry from 2014 to 2018. So in that role, I was leading a group of staff who were supporting students across the campus through various disciplines. It was a time of change for the student desk. It was really finding its feet. We did an awful lot of work to create an identity around service and student experience. And it was just a great time. I got a lot of experience from that. And then this project came along, the Unified Support Model, in 2018, and I applied for it and was lucky enough to become the project manager for that. And that was looking at driving consistency. So there was a review that took place, as with a lot of institutions. I'm hoping this will resonate with a good few people, that there is inconsistency across the institution in relation to how students experience services, how staff experience services. And this project that I've been working on is looking at driving consistency in those support services that exist across the campus, and making sure that everyone's getting the most out of their interactions. And it was halfway through its second phase, the project, when COVID-19 came along. So we were disrupting people's work lives long before COVID came, and introducing new ways of doing things. But COVID kind of reframed that challenge for us. Oops, moving forward. So when we talk about the USM and we talk about what it does, it works on three levels: unified for the student, unified for the team, and unified for the university. Unified for the student or the staff member who's engaged in that one-to-one interaction supporting the student. Unified for the team and ensuring the teams are connected, they have the information they need, they're working with one another to get what they need. And unified for the university, that the university has a really broad picture of what's going on, what's happening across the campus. And that, as you can imagine, translates quite well to our current environment, where connectivity and the capacity to support and all of those things are so important in a remote world. The tagline for the USM is to build partnerships so that together we can achieve more. And that tagline has never been more applicable than it is now. The work that we've been doing, and what you'll see throughout this presentation, really solidifies that was the right tagline to go with. That was the right statement for us to pick at the beginning of this. And the reason why I'm here telling you this story, there's two main reasons behind it. The first of which is that because of this project, and because we were working across the campus with so many colleagues, we had a chance to bring a bunch of people together. And those people were really committed to making things better. And that's why I'm here talking to you about this. And that's why I have this story to tell. But why are you all here? I have to be here. I signed up for it. I said I'd talk. Why did you turn up? So the slide itself here kind of includes what was in the pitch for this session that you all signed up for. So if you're leading or managing an operations team with any level of customer interaction, you're likely to have faced some of the following challenges. And I won't go through each of them, but what I am going to do at this point, because I've been talking for too long already, is I'm going to hand over to yourselves and take a little break, and I'm going to ask you to answer a question. So the question is, of the 4 questions on this slide, which one of these resonates most strongly with you at this moment in time? Either it's the biggest challenge that you're facing, or it's something that you have yet to overcome. Which of these are the main reason why you decided, yeah, this is the session that I want to sign up for today? So I'll give you about, let's say, 30 seconds to answer this poll. And in the meantime, I will take a break and drink some water.
They're coming in quick. Almost half of the people have voted already.
Wow, okay.
It's like watching a racehorse, watching the votes come in. You've got a winner, but like second place, it's very tight.
Hey, don't skew the results.
I'm not going to say a thing. I'm not going to say a thing.
We've got about, let's give people about 5 more seconds.
There's 9 people who haven't voted yet.
That's okay. They're getting a cup of coffee.
You're nearly at 90%. Oh, you're over 90%. It's a good response rate.
Okay, let's close it there.
You share the results.
Share the results, please. Okay, so dealing with more online interactions than ever is a clear winner, followed by trying to support staff who feel overwhelmed and out of control. Yeah, so I had a feeling that's the big one, the more online interactions, and I'll talk about each of these challenges, you know, as I go through the presentation, but so many people are in that same position naturally. You know, the alternatives are gone, everything is online, email inboxes are overflowing. How do you stay on top of things? And then if you're managing a team, or if you're working with staff, if you're working with a team, how do you pull the positives out of this? How do you try and motivate people when they're overwhelmed and they feel completely out of control of their environments? So we're going to talk about all of those in a bit more detail, but it's interesting to know where your heads are before we move on. So thanks very much for that. So yeah, let's do that. Let's talk about each of these and talk about what we experience as a project team, and what we believe the general sentiments out there are in relation to those challenges in UCD. So dealing with more online interactions than ever. So back on the 12th of March this year, we all effectively began working from home, and when that happened, face-to-face and phone services were effectively gone as a support channel for most people, which meant that all interactions now, where there might have been 3, most offices in UCD would have offered 3 main ways of contacting them. People walk in and ask questions face-to-face, they pick up the phone and they call, or they send emails. And all of a sudden, email or face-to-face and phone were gone as interactions, and we ended up only being able to support email. When you push all of your interactions online, as well as email overload, what you end up with is people being forced to use one way to contact you. And if anyone here has ever been forced to use a method of contact that they didn't want to use to contact somebody, you'll know that you're not always in a good mood when you have to do that. It's not always a positive interaction. People were very understanding and continue to be very understanding about the situation, but they are only understanding to a point. And this leads into the next challenge that kind of makes up this overarching challenge, which is this pressure to be reachable. So we're now in this environment where people have questions and they want to reach out and they want to make contact with people. And this puts pressure on you to be able to respond to your interactions in a faster way. You have to be able to get back to the questions to support people. And that kind of means that the customer's expectation is increased. Now, when I say the word customer here, it can be a bad word in third level education, because it's you know, students, are they customers? Are staff customers? When I use the word customer, I'm talking about anyone that you're delivering a service to, anyone you're delivering support to. So that's what I mean when I say that the customer's expectations increased. And during a crisis, silence just isn't an okay response. You know, people want to hear, they need information. And this is because uncertainty is out there. So people don't know. They used to know certain things, and then they didn't know other things, but they could be satisfied with the fact that they knew some things. Now there was so much uncertainty, and that meant more questions coming in, more questions about what they should be doing, what was going to happen next, whether it was students or staff. All of these questions were coming in, and the existing infrastructure was gone. This, basically what I mean by the infrastructure is the things that people used in their day-to-day roles to get things done suddenly disappeared. The physical access to colleagues, walking down the hall, knocking on the door, coming in and saying, hey, can you help me with this? Being able to walk up to somebody's desk, being able to talk through problems so that you didn't have to send an email. That was gone. The signposting between services, connecting people from one place to another, being able to send a student or a staff member from one place to another place. Do you know if that office is even open? Are they delivering a service? Are they offering support? How do you do that? And the peer-to-peer networks, the things that basically people supporting one another, whether that's students supporting one another, telling each other, oh, if you have that problem, go to that office, or if you have that problem, go over there. That was gone. You know, basically everything now was much more pressure on service providers to be able to provide those services, which leads to this overarching issue of more online interactions than ever. And that's something that we saw with a lot of the offices we were supporting. The next one is finding it hard to innovate because of IT bottlenecks. So this isn't about pointing fingers or giving out about the situation. It's about recognizing reality for what it is. And the issue with this is that development time is often taken up with other things, and it certainly was when we all moved remotely, because the focus was placed on making the teaching and learning work naturally. The focus is immediately on making sure that the university is still able to deliver its core purpose of delivering teaching and learning and research to a less degree, but that's it. And as a result, you know, the student and staff support takes a back seat to that, which means that the main mechanism that people have for supporting is still online because there's no alternatives. Also, on top of this, innovation was a challenge before. Even when we were running this project before COVID-19, one of the biggest challenges that we had was that for many people, access to new technology and new approaches was already low. So part of our project was introducing new tech to teams. And for us, a lot of the times, that was the first time that they had seen new technology in a while. They'd been asked to take on new tech, that they'd been asked to try new approaches. So innovation was kind of alien before COVID-19 even hit, but even more so now. So then trying new ways and new things always means disrupting the old ways, and is quite often seen as not worth the effort. Everyone will be familiar with that kind of experience. It works now, so why change it? And certainly when the crisis hits, we're able to answer emails. At least we know how to do that. Don't ask us to do anything else. Why would we try anything else? And I simply don't have the time to think about it. I mean, that's something that we would come up again and again against. It's a challenge we all face. And when you think about it, you know, you've got these people who are now in this situation who they're supporting staff, they're supporting students, they're trying to figure out how to make this all work in a new environment, they're fixing problems as they arise, and they're trying to get the day-to-day job done. There's only so much space. Asking these people to be creative as well simply doesn't work. There's no room for it. So you might as well forget it, right? And then the third one in this is that new needs are emerging daily. So even if you were to be able to get IT support to be able to do something, the focus there is on supporting people to get up to speed in a remote or online world. So it's about training staff to use the systems that the university now has, whether that's Zoom to deliver lectures or whether that's Brightspace to put up notes or whatever. That's where the focus is placed. Which means more training and guidance and support just to get people back to where they were before, to that point of confidence in what they were doing before all of this happened. The third of the challenges then that we come up against is this trying to support staff who feel overwhelmed and out of control. And this is your second, as far as the poll was concerned, the second biggest challenge that you all feel. The day-to-day job, we've already established that there's more interactions than ever, but on top of this, the day-to-day job is new. As I've just said, everyone's learning new technologies, new approaches, new thinking. This leads to a lack of confidence and competence sometimes in what they're doing. It means everyone's going online to try and figure out how to do what they used to do. And the support networks, as I've already mentioned, that we used to learn from are gone. So we're learning in isolation, we're learning by ourselves. There are more complex questions. There's more unknowns, which we've already identified. With that uncertainty comes more questions. And sometimes we can't answer those questions. If anyone's in a support role, they'll know that when they can't answer a question, they feel a bit, not useless, but they certainly feel challenged. And when they feel that way, that can make them feel incompetent. It can make them lose their sense of purpose. Everyone feels a bit wilted, a bit deflated. And on top of all of this, again, a lot of the people that we were working with, a lot of the teams that we were supporting, were dealing with firefighting, and firefighting is draining. They've got these queries coming in that they're trying to get on top of, and firefighting queries, when you know the answer, is tiring. When you don't know the answer, it's absolutely grueling, because you just simply cannot get the pile of things smaller, because it's not firefighting. You're not actually putting out any fires. You're simply sitting there watching everything emerge around you. And then the final of the four, looking for low-cost, minimal-effort solutions. So this wasn't something that a lot of people voted on, but it is something that we've all kind of experienced, particularly on the effort. The low-cost solutions, the the budget for large scale solutions really wasn't there before anyway. And that's something that kind of means that you have to limit what you're able to do, particularly when you look at support solutions. So things like CRM systems or chatbots or whatever it is that you might be looking at. It's always very difficult to dismiss the costs, or to not justify the costs for those solutions. That was already a challenge. And the return on investment isn't clear either, because not many of us have a very good way of measuring the student or staff experience. So if you can't measure it, then you don't know it's bad. And if you don't know it's bad, then you can't justify making it better. That's just a general issue that a lot of people have. But in terms of the minimal effort, and we'll all be familiar with this one, I'm too busy cutting the wood. I don't have time to sharpen the axe. Taking a step back, trying something new means taking a step back from what you're doing. And this means that, not everyone has the time or feels that they have the time to take a step back when they're in the middle of trying to resolve the crisis. So I don't have time to try something new. I'll wait until it's less busy. And the temptation is always there. It will get better. We will have the time. When you're trying to deliver a university project, on the one hand, from my perspective, people waiting until it's less busy isn't really an option, because we've got to drive forward and make sure that things are happening. But also, if you do that stagnation thing where you stand still and wait until it's less busy, you're furthering that sense of being out of control. You're letting the environment kind of happen around you, and you're not really, you feel quite deflated and quite out of control as well. People already have so much going on, so it's enough to have people achieving the baseline. That's something that we've definitely heard, or would have heard early into this. People are just getting up to speed. It's enough that they're doing their day-to-day jobs. Let's not try and put anything more on them. They're not motivated to try new things. We've already established they're deflated. They're not feeling great about themselves. They don't necessarily want to try anything new. And we certainly don't have time for training. We can't be asking people to learn something new again. And then this fourth one, results need to be immediate for anything to be worthwhile. If I'm not going to see the results today, don't talk to me. And if I'm not going to see them tomorrow, don't even talk. And if I can't explain the results, if I can't explain how this is going to make things better to my team or to my manager or to whoever it is, just forget about it. It's not going to happen. So those are broken down. Those are the kind of the challenges underneath that umbrella of those four main challenges that we were coming up against and that we saw. I forgot about my graphic of the alarm clock. There you go. Now you've seen it. So those are those four challenges broken down. And that's pretty much the end of Act 1. So people are sitting there now going, God, that was a whirlwind of stuff. Isn't he so negative? I feel completely out of control now and unempowered. So it does get more hopeful from here, because what we're going to start talking about now is the solution. We're going to start talking about how we overcame some of these challenges. And before I run on to the solutions and to framing those challenges as opportunities, I wanted to get one more poll. So I'm going to ask you some more questions to get a sense of where you are on this journey. This question is, what steps have you or your team taken to overcome these challenges? So none of these may be relevant, but I have a feeling that what I've captured here is certainly where we had met some of the teams on the journey that we were on in terms of where the steps they'd taken. So I've included as many of them here as I could think of. And as far as I'm aware, this is a multiple choice, so you can select more than one option if you've done a few different things. But it'll be interesting just to see where people are on the change journey, if they've left the idea of not being able to do anything, or if they've tried some stuff, and just see where people are in managing their online interactions.
You had a question there in the Q&A asking, do you use chat or a chatbot? So I think this is very timely in terms of a poll to be asking questions on.
Yeah, and I'll talk about the chatbot actually when we get there. There's a little bit in the next section where we discuss that.
There's another question there in the chat earlier on around how to manage expectations when your customers' expectations may actually be too high or unfair. Is that something that you can touch on?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned in the slide earlier, I think expectations actually increased as far as people were concerned when this happened, because no one knew the answers. Everyone kept on looking elsewhere for the answers. And you know, people in UCD responded really quickly and really well to working remotely. But, you know, there's a gap there in terms of being able to actually give people clarity on what's going to happen tomorrow, much less what's going to happen next semester or whenever it is, next trimester. So I do think that expectations increased. People, we already had identified as part of another project that's going on in UCD that students turn to their trusted person for support. They definitely would turn to their trusted person during a time of crisis to find out information. And it's very difficult to be a trusted person at a time like this because you don't always have the answers. So I think that that's definitely something that we've seen.
Yeah.
So if we close that poll, if people have had an opportunity to answer it and share the results. Okay, so let's bring that over here so I'm not looking over there. We've tried alternative ways to manage interactions. That's great. So a lot of people have tried something new. Other people have brought in new technology. I'm actually surprised that we're only at 29% on using auto replies to note how busy we are. I have definitely seen when I've sent emails out to colleagues that a lot of them, most people at this point have an auto reply set up that says, I mean, it's phrased very nicely, but effectively it says, please God, leave me alone. I'm trying to get on top of things. I need you to give me a break. But that's interesting that we're only at 29% on that. And then spreading the workload more, so more staff responding to emails. Yep, that's definitely something we've seen. But that's great. So loads of people have tried new ways to manage interactions, whether that's chat, Zoom, Zoom drop-ins. And to answer the question that came up in the chat, yeah, some areas did try introducing chatbots, or sorry, not chatbots, instant chat to respond to queries that were coming in. And actually only just this morning, we heard back on the experience of a team that did that it was actually easier to manage phone interactions than it was instant chat interactions. So they've gone back to delivering a phone service because of I think it's back to that expectation idea. Instant chat suggests instant response. And again, we've already established not very easy to do that in this world. So that's great. So people have tried new things and some people have tried new tech. So let's talk about Wufoo for a second, which takes us on to the next slide. What steps did we take to address these challenges? So first of all, Wufoo. We were already using Wufoo as part of the project, and the reason why we were using it was we were looking at getting rid of or discontinuing offices' generic email addresses. So if you take an area like the student desk and they already had a contact form, they'd been using Wufoo for a very long time. Before that, they had a generic email address and all interactions would come into that generic email address and it was just email overload. The idea with Wufoo as a contact form or as a way of managing queries was that it made it easier for the team to manage those interactions. So we had already started rolling this out across the campus. We were lucky that we had already made some headway in this. But what does Wufoo actually do for us in this environment, or you know, what did it do? So Wufoo comes along. That took me far too long to do them, I'll let on. And effectively all it is it's an online form builder, right? As a tool, that's all it does. It allows you to build forms online. It's built by the same people who do SurveyMonkey, and it was already in use in UCD. In this new world, the needs that it met were that it allowed us to meet that need of, I need to manage my online interactions better. I need another way, an alternative, a different way to just this constant bombardment of emails about queries that I just simply can't answer, or I'm taking too long to answer the simple ones. I need an alternative to my paper-based processes. So we'll talk about that as well. We'll talk about how it came along and kind of met that need. And then I need to feel in control of my information again. I need to feel in control again, full stop. I need to take some steps that make me feel like I'm being proactive against this crisis that's happening around me. So what's it doing for people? Well, first of all, it's helping them manage queries. In its very most basic form, people have questions and they want answers. So they go online now to find those answers. The form provides this information to people in digestible bites or bits and pieces. And the most important thing in all of this is that that information that's being pushed out through the form to students is being populated by staff. It's being populated by the staff in the teams who answer the questions, the ones who are responsible for answering the questions, and therefore they know the answers. And in the event that the information in the form can't answer the student's question, they are allowed to submit their requests if they need to. They fill in the form in a very standard format, which comes through to the staff. And then the staff have all of the information that they need to answer the question first time. So with that workflow, as you can see up there, there's time being saved that wouldn't be saved were it not for this form existing. And that's being saved in a couple of ways. First of all, the student is saving time, or whoever it is that's using the form. And we have seen forms implemented for staff as well, by the way, to support staff. So whoever's using the form is saving time because they're getting connected with information that they need, relevant information populated by staff, without ever having to submit their question. If they do need to submit their question, the staff are saving time because they're not getting inundated, let's say, as much as they were before with queries. And when the queries do come through, they're coming through in a very standard format that they can engage with and use and work with very, very quickly. And then overall, the person who initially submitted that query is actually getting dealt with faster because it means that the staff are getting emails out faster, more effectively, better. Also, what's happening throughout all of this, and this came up in the chat earlier, is that expectations are being managed. There's automated emails going back and forth that are happening as a result of people using the forms that are putting people in holding patterns. They're much more personalized than the auto reply you'd get if you sent an email to a generic email. So basically, people are in a better frame of mind throughout this entire process. The second thing Wufoo is doing for people is it's helping us move paper-based processes online. So the processes we talk about here and the ones that we would have been helping people work on are about two things. One is about gathering information needed to do the process, and the other is about creating or moving along a workflow. And what we ended up with in this situation when we all moved off campus was that the paper form was no longer available. So what Wufoo is doing for us here is it's replicating the paper form, but it's doing something smarter as well. It's allowing people to rebuild these paper forms that they had in an online world, but they're more dynamic than a paper form would be. Anyone who's filled in a form will know that there's always fields that you should leave blank or maybe fill in, depending on who you are, depending on what your need is. The form figures out all that based on the information that you give it, so you don't need to worry too much about that. So all the information you're gathering through the form is valuable. The kind of value add or the distinct thing that Wufoo does that, let's say, a Google form doesn't do is it creates a email. It generates this email that actually kicks off or adds to or helps move along a workflow. And that's really important for people, or at least it has been really important for people. That then allows people to export their entries into, wherever it is, Excel or another area to look at the entries as they're coming in and manage them that way. So those are the two main things that Wufoo is doing for people. In a nutshell, it's allowing people to take a little bit more control over what's happening around them. So if we go back to the slides that we were looking at earlier, streamlining the overall process. So if we go back to the slides that we were looking at earlier, this idea of dealing with more online interactions than ever, and the 4 challenges that we identified as part of this. Face-to-face and phone are largely gone as a support channel. Pressure to be reachable, more uncertainty means more questions, and the existing infrastructure is gone. Well, how does Wufoo allow us to reframe these challenges as opportunities, or at least how did this tool and our approach help us do that? And I'll say that here, and I will say it again later. Wufoo is just a tool. It's a piece of technology. And the approach that we took to implementing it and to connecting people with it is probably what's more important here. And I look forward to actually some of the questions, hopefully, on how we did that, but I'll talk through how we did it here as well. So first of all, we know, because everything is online, that our students or our staff are going to be on our websites. They're going to be online looking for information anyway. And we control that environment. We control the online content. We control the information in the forms, and we can use that to our advantage. The pressure to be reachable, we can automate our messaging to manage expectations. When somebody submits an entry through the form, they can get an automated reply back saying, thanks for your query. We're dealing with it. We'll get back to you. This gives people a better sense of when they'll hear back, which turns potentially negative interactions into positive ones. It allows you to manage those expectations a little bit better. More uncertainty means more questions. Well, all questions are reportable, so you can pull out your reports in your Excel. You can find out the things that you know. You can separate what you do know from what you don't know. You can take a little bit more control over the unknown and at least say, okay, well, these are the bits that we know. These are the bits that we don't know. Let's look at them as separate. Focus on the stuff that we do and focus on the stuff that we don't. I was talking to somebody who works in an area in UCD, actually, and they were saying that sometimes simply achieving one thing on a day, particularly when you're feeling overwhelmed and when things are very, very busy and challenging, sometimes being able to look back and say, okay, well, I did that and I was good at that part of it. And yes, there's all this other stuff that's messy and I haven't got around to looking at it yet. That's the kind of control that we're talking about here. Because queries are being managed in a particular way, you can look at the ones that you know and gain a kind of a momentum or a sense of control from those that make it easier to accept the fact that there's things that you can't do or there's answers that you don't yet have. And then on the existing infrastructure, we can build a new infrastructure. And this is what we did. And I'll talk about this in terms of how we brought staff through this. But, you know, accept that the existing infrastructure is gone, but that doesn't mean that you can't reconnect people, that you can't connect with other people who are going through the similar thing than you are, and involve those people in helping you come up with a solution or come up with a way of doing something that wasn't there before. And I'll talk about that when we get to that challenge of motivating staff. In terms of the IT development bottlenecks, yes, development time is taken up with other things. Innovation was already a challenge before all of this, and new needs are emerging daily. Okay, so what did we do here? Well, first of all, we're driving the solution ourselves. We're not looking to an external source to do stuff. We're taking it back within the teams and we're saying, right, what do we do to improve the situation within our own teams? And that means that we're enabling those that are doing the doing, or, you know, answering the emails, running the process, to actually be part of developing the solution. That's empowering. That gives people a sense of confidence. Innovation was already a challenge before this. So what we're doing with this, when we roll this out to areas, what we're doing is when we're engaging with people, we're making the innovation that we're dealing with relevant to the day-to-day job that they're doing. Everything that they're doing is more relevant to this environment that they're in. And again, that idea of taking control back over it. So instead of trying to force something else into the people's heads to say, be creative too, we're saying, well, in relation to these challenges that you're facing, how can this tool help you meet those needs? How can we be creative in solving the bits that you're already dealing with? Which makes it a lot easier to engage with people. And then this is a general thing. People fear small change less when there's a big one. So this has kind of worked to our advantage. And I won't lie, in terms of a change project, we found it a lot easier to engage with people during the COVID crisis than we would have beforehand, because people are less kind of concerned about the concepts of change because everything has changed.
This came up in the chat there, Jeremy. Lena was saying she thinks it's an interesting point to make that some or most units who introduced WUFU did it while we're working from home.
Yes, yeah, well, there you go. So that's exactly what I mean. We definitely found it easier to engage with people because that age-old challenge that we would have come up against in loads of teams, we already know what we're doing. We've already got a good handle on it. Why do you want to change it? People didn't know what they were doing and they didn't have a good handle on it. So it's definitely made it easier to engage. New needs emerging daily. So yes, but we can meet new needs in new ways. We don't have to rely on the old ways to meet these new needs. And moving online doesn't always mean replicating the offline. So a lot of the times our offline processes, and we've seen this in some of the teams that we've worked with, a lot of the times our offline processes fell into place. They became what they were over time, and someone took responsibility for this part and someone else took responsibility for that part, and it just kind of happened that way. Well, when we're moving them online, we don't have to replicate that messiness. We can actually take them, we can rebuild them, we can think about what we're doing, we can apply lean methodologies, we can do whatever it is that we need to do to make them more straightforward and more clear so that we can then follow them. So that's actually an opportunity as well, and a way that we can meet these new needs. And solutions can be robust. So, you know, depending on whether we're on campus or off campus, depending on whether we're doing this through a contact form or whether we're doing it through a generic email address, we can make things more robust, that we can make them set up in such a way that they can apply to whatever scenario we find ourselves in. And then on to the big one. So the second biggest one from your perspectives, trying to support staff who feel overwhelmed and out of control. So the four ones here, or the three here, were the day-to-day job is new. There are more complex questions about the unknowns, and firefighting is draining. So those were what we had identified. So how does this help with those? Well, so we've already identified, we've got new technologies, new approaches, new thinking. with that, what we did was we actually developed new support networks around these new technologies that we were introducing. So when we were running training for staff, we didn't just bring staff together who were on the same team. We brought staff together who were in similar roles to do the training. And through doing that, what we established was this network of people who were meeting this new challenge together as one. I think that's one of the most interesting things I've seen in terms of how things are working in this new world that didn't really work the same way before, is that the idea of what a team is, I think we're seeing change over time to be groups of people who are passionate about the same things. And the online world allows people to collaborate and connect in a way that they wouldn't have, let's say, before in other ways. So sometimes people feel connections, particularly around things that they're passionate about, with people outside their own team than they would with the people who they worked in the same office with for years. So that's just really been an interesting insight. And these connections, these networks that we put together to actually support the work that's going on, have made it relevant to the new types of support that are happening. So now we have like the WUFU group who you can turn to ask questions to about how you're using this form to do this thing, or how you might be using this other form to do something else. How are you managing the emails when they come into Gmail? All that kind of stuff is just interesting, and instilling confidence back in those staff. The other stuff, there's more complex questions about the unknowns, but when we implement a form or when we roll something out to an area, what we do is we can actually identify the questions before they arrive in and separate them out, meaning that we can compartmentalize the known and the unknown. So the bits that we know, we can stick in one place. The bits that we don't, we can devote more time to the ones that we don't know. And this basically puts this sense of control and competence back in staff. They're delighted. Well, they're not that delighted. They're still answering emails, but they're more in control than they were before. And this idea of firefighting being draining, yeah, okay, it is, and it always will be. There's always going to be peaks, and there's always going to be times when we're overwhelmed with interactions. But with people connected to the info and expectations managed, it gives a bit of breathing room, and it allows that firefighting to be focused again, the same way that it was before all of this. And we can regain a little bit of control over what's happening around us. And then on the last one, looking for low-cost, minimal effort solutions. Well, these are the main, this is what we identified before. The budget for large scale solutions wasn't there before, so it's not there now. I'm too busy cutting the wood. I don't have time to sharpen the axe. I can't ask people to learn new things right now. And I need immediate results for anything to be worthwhile. I need it now. So let's look at those. Well, our experience in this was start small scale. So it doesn't have to be a large scale solution. A contact form is basic: name, student number, email address, query. And that in and of itself, you're taking control. You're taking steps to resolve issues. We already had licenses for WUFU. As I said, we were already engaged in rolling out this tool, but a lot of these tools offer trials or cheap packages or demos or something, and they're very powerful in what they can do. So I would say, don't try and focus on changing everything overnight. Focus on the low and the small first, and regain something, and focus on the needs it will meet, not just what the tool does. A lot of these tools are pitched in what they can do for you, what they can, here's the various different features that it has. Don't focus on the features, focus on the needs. What do you need to do? I need to be able to manage my emails better. I need to be able to do whatever it is. Focus on those needs and you'll end up connecting with the tool a lot more and justifying the time that you'll spend. I'm too busy cutting the wood, I don't have time to sharpen the axe. Yeah, trying something new does mean taking a step back. That's true. It remains true to this day, and it always will remain true. But instead of waiting for things to be less busy, my encouragement in this, and what I've seen be very powerful, is iterate. Try something. As I said, try something small. I was talking to, again, somebody in one of the offices that has implemented one of these forms, Gregory from the arts office actually, who's done a manual registration form using WUFU. And he told me that the first iteration was just a copy of the paper form. He didn't have the time to think about what it could be in the end. So he started with what it was. And then from there, connected with colleagues about what was possible, changed it, adapted it, made it better. And now there it is, doing stuff that it never could have done in the first place. I can't ask people to learn new things right now. Yeah, okay. It is enough to have people achieving the baseline. So focus your solutions on the baseline. Focus on the day-to-day, focus on what people are trying to achieve today, and make things better as far as that's concerned. That will motivate people. If you're saying to people, let's put together a solution that means that you actually have to do less of this thing that you're doing right now, people will be empowered to engage with that. Trust me, I've seen it. And they actually might surprise you in terms of the effort that they'll put in. We, when setting people up with licenses for this, gave people access to it, and they started going off and creating forums in ways that I didn't even anticipate or expect. People will want to make things better for themselves, and they will go and engage with things. So that's been really interesting to see how that's evolved. And then I need immediate results for anything to be worthwhile. Well, start with small results in mind. Maybe your first result is, I just need to simply reduce the amount of emails I'm getting. You'll achieve that, trust me, because by connecting people with information without them needing to submit a query, they will actually stop emailing you. And then, you know, have a big goal in mind. Maybe your big goal is to get rid of all of your paper forms, but do it in incremental steps, and you will get there eventually. And also celebrate your successes. Whether that's connecting with other colleagues about what you're doing, and that's what we've done with a lot of people, is we've brought them together to talk about what they've achieved. And that's given kind of this sense of accomplishment and a sense of control again. So the key takeaways for us in this, very, very briefly, because I know I'm actually nearly over time now. So Wufoo is like any technical solution, it's just a tool, right? And like any tool, if you're trying to apply the wrong tool to the wrong job, it's not going to work. I'm not going to be able to dig a hole. Well, I'm not going to be able to dig a very effective hole with a wrench. And it's going to be used for different reasons, different people. So focus your tools, focus the tools on the needs, as I've said earlier. And to get to the IT solution, first of all, you need to know what the problem is. And no one knows the problems more than the staff who are dealing with them on a daily basis. No one knows what kind of questions they're getting better than the staff that are answering them. So involve the people who are doing the doing. That's crucial. Start with why. I'm a huge fan of Simon Sinek. If anyone hasn't seen any of the work that he's done, I'd say get onto YouTube and look at some of his videos. He's all about starting with why, and he says you get there through how and what. In this sense, I would say your how and your what is, what are you or your teams trying to do, or what are they trying to get done? What are the jobs to be done? What are your needs, and how can you make it better? There is something very empowering about that concept of taking control over your own environment and not waiting for somebody else to tell you what to do, which leads into the final thing, which is just make sure you start on something. Because the change is happening anyway, and nobody has the answers. So this is another phenomenon that we've seen emerging. Sometimes knowing that nobody else knows how to do something is the very thing that gets you motivated to go and do it. Because you might just be sitting back waiting for someone to come and tell you, no, this is the correct way to do it, or this is the solution that you should be using. Trust in the fact that no one knows what's being done about this stuff, and develop the solution yourself. It's liberating. It allows you to move forward in ways that you wouldn't have before. So wrapping up and giving time for questions, I'm going to stop talking for a second. Olga, how are we doing?
We're doing great, but you're going to start talking again in a minute, because we've got 9 minutes and some people have some questions they want answered.
Okay, that's fine. Yes.
Carmel wants to know if a team are interested in replacing email queries with using a generic email address to Wufoo in a practical way. Can you tell her where do they start? What do they need to do?
Send me an email. My email address is up on the thing. But more importantly than that, what I should say, and I may not have said it earlier because I was talking too much, one of the nicest things about the contact form is that it doesn't actually change the way you or the team deal with your email interactions. When an email comes through the form, you still reply to the email. So that's one of the reasons I think why it's been so successful, is because you don't have to learn a new skill, except for building the form, which we do with the team. So the team are involved in actually designing and developing the form. But in terms of actually managing the interactions, it's still just by email. So when the email is submitted, it comes through to the email address, you reply to it as if you were replying to the student, because you are replying to the student. So it's really, that bit is quite clean. But if you're interested in starting, send me an email, make contact. I'm more than happy to talk in relation to what we've done and talk you through
it. John Wyatt has a bit of a UCD centric question. He wants to know if you're integrating Wufoo with UniShare.
Great question. Hopefully, and if not Wufoo and if not UniShare, then something, because I think that that's to talk about the job to be done as opposed to talk about the solution. What we want to be able to do is, UniShare, by the way, for anyone who's not familiar, is a tool that we use in UCD to log and track the interactions that staff are having with students and other staff. So it's kind of like a CRM system. It allows us to keep a track of what's going on. And John, what your question is, if I understand correctly, is this concept that you're tracking the query from when it's asked, it's automatically recorded, the response is automatically recorded, and as a result, you've got this idea from question inception to outcome, start to finish. And we would love to see that. Those are the two tools we're using now, Wufoo and Unishare. And yeah, I'd love to see an integration between them. At the moment, back to our IT slide, there isn't the development time to do that, but fingers crossed we get there, yeah.
Robbie has a question. I'm not sure I fully understand it. So if Robbie gives me a heads up, I'll be able to turn on his mic and he can ask it if I butcher it. But he wants to know if there's a better way to integrate Wufoo in email other than having someone in the office transcribe the query from email to a Wufoo form. That may make more sense to you because I don't know Wufoo as well. Something around the integration of Wufoo with email that's tricky.
Well, so, you know, you pick your email address and your query goes from the form to there. I'm not sure if I'm understanding that question fully, but I'm happy
to offline. That's okay. We can take that one offline. Yeah. With the GDPR question, to what extent is Wufoo GDPR proof?
Yeah, so
go ahead.
Yep, no, there's a data protection agreement in place, and it is secure. As far as I'm aware, there is an ongoing conversation taking place in relation to licenses and stuff, but that's more in relation to making sure that we have more licenses available, I think, and switching it to a corporate account or something. Without speaking on it, because I don't know the ins and outs of it, the data centers for Wufoo are based, or there are European data centers where our stuff is held, so all that stuff is GDPR compliant. So yeah.
Great. And I'm going to end on this. It's not a comment. Oh, wait, well, Gregory snuck in there. We'll give him his question.
Okay.
How do we get better institutional support in expanding access to plugins and new tools needed to forge forward? No pressure.
How do we do that?
How do we do that? Gregory or mean?
No, it's a great question, and it's one that pops into my head right before I fall asleep every night. No, it's a really good question, and it's something that I think we need to think about. My sense would be that the best way to prove the need for something is to prove the value that it's having for people. And at the moment, with the momentum that this has gained and how valuable it's been for offices, that argument is becoming stronger and stronger. There are more things that Wufoo can do if it integrates with other things like Unishare, for example, but also other tools out there. So prove the need, prove the value, Gregory, keep using it, and we'll get there, I think, eventually. But it's just a matter of time.
I've got hopefully now I'm going to try something new. I'm going to try and bring Robbie live so he can ask you his question himself.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I've allowed Robbie to talk. Robbie, you can unmute yourself. Thank you.
Hi, Jeremy, and thanks, Olga. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, can do.
Super. Thanks. No, thanks. It's great. I'm just curious. So I suspect, I predict reluctance to turn off the generic email account. And I'm trying to get ahead of that and think, well, can you do both? And if you do both, you're still going to get queries in. And is someone in the office to make everything go through Wufoo? Are they going to have to transcribe the query into the Wufoo form? Or have you encountered any way of better integration? If that question makes sense, that's great. Yeah. Otherwise, I'll follow up. Thanks.
No, absolutely. That's a really good point. You won't change behaviors overnight. So, and because you're still using that generic email address, so basically the form is routing all of your queries to that generic email address. So if I was to set one up for usm@ucd.ie, when somebody submits a query through the form, it would go to usm@ucd.ie. Overnight, people aren't going to stop using that email address because they have it saved. So people can still email directly, and it's actually up to you how you manage that. And this is this idea of incremental iteration. At the beginning, you can say, thanks for your query. By the way, from this date, we will be using this contact form. So make sure you go back and try next time through this form. And then once you get to that date, you can be a little bit more heavy-handed, and you can say, thanks for your query. Unfortunately, we're no longer accepting direct emails to this address. Please go and use the form. But it's about the need, and it's about the value for the person who's using the form as well. If they're getting connected with information and they're getting responses quicker than they would be if everyone was just emailing, they'll be more likely to use it. They'll see the value and they'll be more engaged with it too. So hopefully that gives you some sense, because you're not getting rid of that generic email address.
Does that answer your question, Robbie?
It does, yeah. No, thanks very much.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So you've got 3 minutes left. So I wanted to end on this one because I thought it was lovely. Karen and Pauline are delighted with how their basic Wufoo form worked out with their school. And
Okay.
they say thanks for the help from Jeremy, Amy, and other lovely people in the network.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's very nice. I'm going to stop sharing for a second so that you can see us.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Thank you, Karen and Pauline. Was it Karen and Pauline?
It was.
Yes, thank you.
That's it.
Oh, that's it. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to do something else. I can't stop sharing. Hang on. Wait a second. I have to. Oh, this is terrible. I'm supposed to do this part where I take you and I talk to you about saving the date for the next Lean HE festival thing. So current plans are for it to be taking place between the 20th and the 22nd of October 2021. It's going to be in Glasgow. So that's in the University of Strathclyde. So if you're interested, there's the save the date. Who knows what it will actually take place between now and then, but fingers crossed that's how it happens, and we'll all be able to meet up in Glasgow and have real life face-to-face interactions.
Sounds good.